Hey, what's up? Thanks for joining me on Real Talk NFT. As you know, I'm your host, Brian, and we have a really special guest here today for you. David Johansson, the CEO of both MetaKing Studios and the creator of the MMO game BlockLords. BlockLords is the world's first medieval MMO game with a player owned economy. Really happy to have him on today talking all about it. I got to take a look at a little bit of a preview of the trailer, really of an impressive game, great graphics. David, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Brian, for having us. Excited to be here. Talk about the state of the industry and our game, BlockLords.
Yeah, absolutely. We've obviously in NFTs and Web3, that's all we talked about on the show. Gaming has been really popular. I know you have an extensive experience. Maybe just give us a little bit about a background about yourself and your gaming background.
Yeah, so about me, I'm based in Sweden. I'm sitting here in Stockholm, but I'm really a nomad, I'd say. I grew up in France and Sweden. Went to the U.S. where I studied film. So my initial love for the arts was filmmaking, and worked in Hollywood a few years after college. Ended up in China, kind of randomly, but mainly because I didn't have a U.S. visa anymore. But I did think it was the right time to leave LA because LA is great. I love it, but also that city consumes you a bit. So it was good to get out there and left for China, which was an amazing experience and really changed my life in many ways. But I spent 8 years in China, and while I started in film industry there, I quickly moved over to gaming because I saw that it was. I mean, essentially, I was working 18-hour days on film sets, and it was really like cool kung fu movies, and I was working on pretty big budget commercials, but still, 18 hours on set, no pay. You're not you're not living the life. You're just kind of scrambling all the time, and ended up in gaming and at a company called Yodzu, which was really amazing. It was a really cool experience. This is right as Facebook games were really taking off, and these Chinese Korean companies that had a lot of experience with free to play gaming, they were able to really come in with really aggressive user acquisition strategies and it's profitable free to play models, and they were really like just cleaning up on Facebook games. And so as I learned that, I got really interested and got deeper into it. Got promoted to creative director, essentially within 6 months, which is kind of something unique to China. But there's a lot of demand for creative knowledge over there. So I was able to work my way up very quickly. And yeah, worked on a number of free to play games on PC, no, mostly on browser and mobile platforms. And that's kind of what led me into the Web3. But I will save the Web3 journey for later. But yeah, that's essentially the background.
Are you a gamer yourself, or you just love developing in the creative side of gaming?
I'm definitely a gamer. I played games since I was 6 years old. Basically, I think it was the NES was the first. I didn't get on the Atari, so, sadly, but yeah, really the NES was my debut into gaming. The Mario games, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Got into the Super Nintendo, the Sega's, N64. So I've been playing throughout. The type of games really varied quite a lot. Could be platformers, could be sports games. I played American football, as we call it here in Sweden. I played American football when I was a teenager. So obviously loved Madden and played a lot of Madden. But really the games that I spent the most time on from the age of like 15, 16 onwards were strategy games. So Total
Yeah.
War was a huge game of mine that I played a lot. The Obviously the Command and Conquer series that was a bit earlier, but I played a lot of Tiberian Sun and Command and Conquer and Red Alert. And yeah, I'd say once the Paradox games started taking off in the early 2000s, actually Paradox, their office is right behind me here.
Oh, cool.
I played those quite a lot. That was really that was when, oh wow, you can actually take the minutia of running an empire in the 18th century and turn that into a game. And so yeah, so as a gamer, I've played really everything, and I still play the popular title. I played Starfield most recently, and I played God of War a lot. But
Yeah.
the strategy games are the ones that'll keep me for hundreds or thousands of hours.
I could relate. Those strategy games, whenever I was a kid, especially, really like captivated me. It was just so fun. Like, you just want to get home from school and like continue developing your land or your army. And
Yeah,
that's all I could like
yeah.
think about. And I get that vibe whenever I look at Block Lords. I definitely want to dive into it because it's a super impressive looking game. But we'd love to know just kind of your macro view on gaming overall with Web3 and NFTs. I know And I talk a lot about this on the podcast with a lot of different people. It seems like that's always like this was such a natural fit for me. Like incorporate Web3, give a player economy. Web3 NFTs make so much sense in gaming, and it seemed to be
Yeah.
not rejected by the gaming community, but they were just a little bit more guarded. Could you kind of give me a little bit of your
Yeah.
insight and why that is?
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny because I before I got into Web3, and I'd say I'm pretty much a Web3 veteran at this point because I've been doing it for 5 years. But before I did Web3, I did free to play, and what's funny is free to play gets just as much, if not more, hate than Web3 does, right? Like, think of all the hate you see for a game that adds loot boxes into their game, or
Oh yeah,
for doing something that might be pay to win, or for basically anytime developers try to make money, there's going to be some backlash for it. And Web3, and also, I mean, we do have to acknowledge there's been a lot of bad actors in the space. There's been a lot of
yeah,
people doing sales, taking money, not really delivering anything at all, or not even trying to deliver anything. And so when that happens, there's going to be caution. I'd say, going back to what you started the question on, I feel, because essentially I didn't start off as a Web3 enthusiast. I just didn't know about it. And then in 2017, I was just leaving a job. I was kind of figuring out what to do next. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, look into ICOs. Like, what are I?" He's like, "You could try that for your startup." I was like, what's an ICO?" And so I looked into it, and well, at first I was like, "Okay, what's an ICO? Well, I don't understand any of this. So what do I have to do?" Well, okay, so went back. What is actually a blockchain? How does Bitcoin
yeah,
work? And I spent a good like 3 days. I took some LinkedIn course. I did a bunch of YouTube videos. I read a bunch of blogs, and then after about 3 or 4 days of research, it like sunk in, right? Like something just flipped in my brain, and I was like, "Wow, this is actually digital ownership. This is proof of ownership. This is like, no matter what it's worth, it's yours, right? You own it no
yeah,
matter what. And then because of that, there's always going to be liquidity, so that it doesn't matter if the price is $1 or $1,000, as long as I can prove it's mine and that I can get that $1. Actually, that is extremely valuable, and that's something that wasn't really done in other digital assets, from what I could see back then, right? And so as soon as it really sunk in, like, okay, this is how blockchain works. This is what makes Bitcoin worth a Bitcoin. From then on, it was like, not could gaming work with crypto. It was like, gaming will work with crypto. And let's be at the center of this. That's really been my philosophy since I got into the space in 2017. And yeah, so I think now, when we started, there was really no one doing this, and now 5 years later, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of teams doing Web3 games. And I do think we're at this shift right now where, first off, the first batch of like meaningfully funded games, like obviously we're one of them, but we're not the only ones. There's, I'd say, probably, less than 100, but probably over 50 games that have received, $5 million plus in funding in the last 3 years, and are now starting to actually deliver projects. And at the same time, also, now you're starting, I travel a lot, I go to a lot of conferences. You're starting to see a lot of different Web2 giants, and all of them have some form of Web3, either exposure via investments or exploration via a small team, or at least they have one person that's like analyzing the markets and telling them what to buy. So I feel we're entering this really interesting phase that free to play kind of entered in 2012, 2013, where now there are some good projects almost ready, and we just have to see which ones are going to take off, and which ones aren't.
yeah. You nailed it. Kind of my moment as well is whenever I remember like going through the blockchain, and then I was into cryptocurrency pretty early on, really early on in my time. I went through the 2017 2018 ICO boom and bust. That was a lot of fun. It
Yeah.
kind of grew with the industry, and then when I discovered NFTs really early on and really started going down the rabbit hole years ago. But I remember like having a hard time. I feel like I'm pretty like in tune to catching on to like new tech. It's
Mm.
something I'm always interested. But I remember like having a little bit of a hard time to grasp the full concept. And like one day I was like, okay, I
Mm.
totally get it. I was like, and then when I tried to explain it to people, or this was early on,
It's very
especially
hard.
whenever it was so hard. And then I kind of was just
Yeah.
like, it's the first time ever we can own something digital. And they're like, I don't get it.
Mm.
I was like, well,
Yeah.
you can have ownership of something digital. Everything else is almost like open source. You can right click and save it. Now you can exchange it. That seemed to help people out. But then when you talk
Mm.
about gaming, for instance, and if you run into a game and you're like, do you buy skins? Do you put money into Roblox? Whatever it is, that money's going to the developer, and but you're flexing these skins and everything along those lines. Wouldn't it be cool, like if you had sole ownership in a decentralized marketplace and all that good stuff, or being able to play to earn, and then every time I bring it up and get into it, their eyes get huge. So like, I'm interested. How do I get involved? I'm like, well, we're still working the kinks out a little bit, because I do see Web3 and gaming. It almost feels like 2024 is going to be a really, really big year for it. Jumping in, because we're about 10 minutes in already, and I love your game, and I'd love to hear about BlockLords. If you could give us like just the audience, break down what it is, what's special about it, the full pitch would be great.
Yeah, so essentially, BlockLords is, as you described it, an MMO medieval strategy game, right? And the idea here is we wanted to build a game where different types of player behaviors are incentivized different ways, but most importantly, where those different types of behaviors have to contribute to the game's economy and to the fun of all players in different ways as well, right? So the idea is really it's a free to play game. You start off as a farmer, right? So the peasant, the peasant lifestyle, and as a farmer, you don't have to buy an expensive NFT to get started and to start farming. You get an NFT for free. So everybody who downloads the game and creates an account and starts playing will get a free hero NFT. It can be male, it can be female. They'll have their own name. They'll have their randomized stat sets. They'll have their randomized traits. As you start farming, basically you will pick out a region on the world map where you start to farm. So every region will be controlled by a lord or a lady. Some of them are uncontrolled yet, but essentially, eventually, everyone will have a ruler in their land. But you're not the ruler when you start playing. You're just a lowly farmer setting up your farm. Exactly, you're lowly, but that's okay. Everybody's gotta work your way up. You gotta work your way up. And
we're not all born into the royal bloodline.
Exactly. So once you get started, you unlock your farm, and the best way to describe the farming is a hybrid of Age of Empires resource farming with a Stardew Valley, right? So it's a very peaceful experience. Cool. You just set up your buildings, you level up your buildings, you grind for resources, right? So there's over 13, I believe it's 13 types of resources we have. So you can collect wood in the forest, you can process the wood into planks, you can collect rocks, and of course, there's a lot of food resources. You can plant wheat and harvest the wheat, and then turn the wheat into grain, and then the grain you can turn into bread. So there's a lot of these like loops where you start off with a base resource and you refine it into a different resource. And so essentially, that's very much the early gameplay, and that's a lot of what's live right now. Is you build buildings, you recruit squads, you harvest resources, you collect those resources, and you use those resources to expand more, or you can go to the region marketplace and you can sell those resources for gold, right? And you can also use gold to buy any resources that you might be needing. So that's a lot of the initial gameplay. Now, what we've also added to spice it up a bit is we've added PvE attacks, right? So sometimes a bear will show up and try to steal some of your resources, or some wolves will show up and try to hurt your squads, right? So that's adding a little bit of fighting to it. So if the initial gameplay is all about farming, and that's like the level 1 gameplay, that's live currently on the Epic Game Store. There's another level to that, is that you as a farmer, as I mentioned, you have a ruler, and because you have a ruler, you actually have to pay taxes to them, right? So different regions will have different tax rates, of course, right? Nobody can escape taxes. And essentially,
even
as
in Web3 gaming,
especially in Web3 gaming, you can't escape taxes. So everything you do is basically taxed by your lord. But again, your lord could set a low tax rate, or they could set a high tax rate, and there's different benefits and disadvantages between doing both. But that's essentially how we're building this collaboration between different types of players. Whereas you have the rulers, and the rulers earn taxes from to the city coffers. But also now there starts being a little competition, right? Because as a ruler, you need to get as many farmers to farm in your land as possible, right? And the way you do that is by being an active lord or lady. Yeah. And what you can do is you can build city buildings. Different city buildings will have different advantages. For example, building a library will unlock special adventures that are available for people in your region at a discount, or to people from other regions, but then that's more funds to the city coffers. So I'm rambling on a bit here, but that's kind of to explain that the farmers create the raw resources, Those resources are taxed by the rulers, right? The lords and ladies. But the lords and ladies have a responsibility to expand and build upon the infrastructure of the region, right? And the more they develop their region, the more attractive it's going to be for the farmers in that region. So all of this is live on the Epic Game Store. But then the next phase, the next chapters that are going to start coming in now in 2024 is when it gets really exciting, because what we're going to introduce is the ability for people to create their own raider armies and
Oh,
go attack other farms, right? So you can go to another region and go attack a farm, kind of Viking style or Mongol style, and just steal resources. And that's going to hurt the tax revenue, right? If your region gets targeted a lot, and obviously the better your region is, the more targeted it's going to get. So that's also going to be kind of a
sure.
complex mechanism. Now the rulers have a problem where they have to essentially incentivize other warrior heroes to protect the land, their region, right? And so that's where we get some of these guild mechanics going, where people are going to target certain regions for raiding, other groups are going to protect their regions for raiding, and then at the top of it, we're essentially going to have kingdom wars or wars for conquest, where users essentially take over the entire map and have these very big wars between different types of players. I don't know if you follow EVE Online, but there was this famous article where about $100,000 worth of spaceships was destroyed, right? And that's how we see it as well. So on the hero NFT side, I mentioned you get a free hero NFT when you get started, but players also have many different ways to win hero NFTs, or you can of course buy them from other users on the market, or sometimes we have special events as mints as well. Those heroes, when added to squads, they will give you great production boosts, and later on during battles, they will also give you great boosts. But here's where we introduce something kind of interesting, which was the hero permadeath. So all heroes will have a limited lifespan. So that means because your
Okay.
hero is going to die, you need to get married, you need to have kids. And also you need to be a bit careful when you go, raiding and looting, because there is a chance you might lose your hero, and you better have kids to take over your dynasty by then.
Very cool. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of game theory behind it, picking and choosing how to raid if you have a lineage to take over your farm.
Yeah.
So if you're a lord or a lady, well, I guess I should start here. Do you evolve out of a farmer? How's that work?
Yeah. So for now, becoming a ruler is very difficult. You do need a unique hero, and for now, there's only 50 unique heroes on the market. So I'd say
Okay.
at this point in the game, it's impossible to actually work your way up to ruler. You just need to get your hands on a unique. That said, we do have giveaways and raffles quite often with our community. But the best way, really, if you want to get in as a ruler right away, is to get a unique hero. That said, over time, there will be ways. The first step will be from farmer to warrior. So that's when we add the raiding mechanics and more of the warrior style gameplay. The idea will be you start your farm, you expand your region, your little farm, you expand it to
Yep.
several sectors, you recruit battle squads, and then you'll be able to send those battle squads to raid others or to take part in wars. That's essentially the first step. Then what we're going to add sometime next year will be a challenge system where a ruler can be challenged, and that's when you'll get like civil wars within regions, and it'll be very, very difficult, and you'll definitely need a group of players together. But that's when essentially you'll be able to become a ruler without a unique hero. That said, your hero does need to be of noble blood. So we're going to have all these, these descendancies coming from unique heroes, uh, so that people can actually get their hands on them and progress. So I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but it's like in medieval times, it wasn't really that easy to go from farmer
Sure.
to emperor, but some people did it, so it will be possible.
Yeah, so I think I picked up on it there. So there is a way. So if you're not the best leader, lord, or lady in the game, you could actually be overthrown through some sort of civil war. And it sounds like that's will be difficult to do because you have to get different sections
Yeah,
and territories to team up. But that's fun. That's like
yeah,
a really
exactly.
interesting way. So when as a lord, you're receiving tax benefits from the farmers and the crops and everything that they're growing, and then you occur a value, and then you can deploy those funds to grow your territory. And there'll be
Correct.
obviously really high end lords and ladies that really
Yeah,
put a lot of money and time and effort into their territory, and then some that could just be almost like money hungry or tax hungry and not
yeah.
deploying a ton, and which way that works. So how's the player economy work? Is there a token with the game? How's that whole setup work with the gameplay?
So as of now, there's no token, but we have announced that we will be doing a token, and we're giving a bit more
Oh,
details
nice.
actually on that in the coming months. So it's a good timing to be talking about that. And yeah, essentially the way it will work is the users. Essentially, the idea is to get a lot of users into the game, obviously, and to get these users spending a lot of time. But then depending on the type of user you are, you will work with the tokens different ways, right? So the farmers are likely not going to invest in the token or buy the token initially. They're going to be looking to earn some tokens. That said, we don't want it to be a complete value extraction mechanism. So because
Yeah.
that's the problem we've seen in play to earn games where the guilds come
Oh,
in or some bots guys come in and they extract all of the value. So the way we'd rather like to see it is the farmers, they provide the raw resources of the region. They provide a lot of the gameplay time. They provide a lot of the player economy, the player part of the economy. And for that, they will be incentivized partially by the project in that some of the top farmers will win some leaderboards, but most importantly, by other rulers who need them to feed their armies or rulers who need them to provide them good wives, as NFTs. You could say there's a lot of different ways, essentially, where the farmers will benefit from being in a ruler that's very active. And so if the farmer players are farming a lot of resources. They can either use them to expand their farm, they can sell them for other in-game assets to other players, or they can convert them into ale. And ale is essentially a secondary token, you could say, but it's actually going to be inside of the game. So I'm giving you some alpha because I don't think we've
I
made this
love it.
public. But essentially, the ale will be used to breed and marry and train NFT heroes, right? And
Ah,
essentially, there will be some trading of ale and some other resources in the game. So that means that there's different types, right? If you're a farmer going to be the best farmer, you're going to expand your farm and become the best farmer you can be, right? If you're a farmer who likes breeding NFTs, you're going to use farm to get ale and use your ale to get as many NFT heroes as possible and then sell those on the market maybe. Or you could be a person who creates a lot of resources, sells them for gold, and uses them for whatever gold is worth in the game. So there's all these different little tracks, and that's just for the farmers, right? And then for the warriors, it's going to be a little bit different because they have more chances to actually earn the Lord's token, because there will be quite a lot of raider bounties, or again protector bounties, which are set from the lords, right? The lord players, and I'm talking about the main token, the Lord's token here. Uh, but that one is more high risk, high reward. So imagine you're grinding for like a month to get like a really powerful army, and now you take part in a battle that's possibly going to give you some token rewards. Okay, great. But now, if you lose your whole army, well, you're back to grinding for a month. Or what you can do is use the token to make things go a bit faster, and you're also contributing to the game's economy. Or maybe you're paying off some farmers to get you the resources you need faster, but at least you're contributing to the economy so that you can field another army and then go back to battle, and maybe you win, maybe you lose, right? And then at the top levels, it's the same. So we're doing kind of that at every level where yes, you can extract value. If you're lucky, if you're good, if you're persistent, you will be able to extract value, but you do have to contribute something, whether it's your time, your
sure.
skill, your community, whatever it is, you have to contribute. That's how the player
Yeah.
economy is driven, essentially.
Yeah, you want people to be involved, love the game, the stickiness to it, so that makes a ton of sense. You want to incentivize the people that are playing and essentially giving back to the game and the community, and they get
Yeah.
something in return. It makes a lot of sense. Um, I just jotted something down here. How do you? So if I want to go on a raid, or like I'm a farmer and I want to start a civil war or anything along those lines, how do you communicate with the other territories without your lord or lady finding out? Is there like a private chat? How's that work?
Yeah. So to be clear, those features aren't live yet. So they're very much planned
Cool.
features. So for now, the
Yeah.
farming and ruling is live. So for now, a lot of our communication between farmers and lords is happening on Discord. So our Discord is very active. There's a lot of users there. They've spun out their own Discord groups, and there's a lot of like poaching
I'm
going on,
sure.
where like join my region versus my region, which is great. We really want to encourage that, and we're definitely going to be encouraging that post token launch as well. Once by the time the battle system goes live in the game, we will have something called the taverns inside of the game. Taverns will be a city building, so same thing here. It will be unlocked by the lords or the ladies, and it'll be upgraded. And the more you upgrade it, the more features you have. And the taverns will be really important because one thing will be there'll be a region chat and a world chat, right? So you can chat with other people in your region or in other regions, and you can plan your raids there, right? And the second part is there will also be hero rentals. So as I mentioned, these heroes are NFTs, right? You can buy NFTs, you can trade NFTs on chain right now on our website, but not inside the game. But that said, we're getting a lot of Web 2 users who aren't Web 3 native. They might not want to set up a wallet. They don't know how this
Yeah.
works, and that's totally fine. But the tavern will be the place where you can actually rent heroes from other players who do have NFTs or who have knowledge of NFTs, and you'll be able to get heroes from them. So the tavern is really the place where all of that will take place.
What's the what blockchain did you choose? What's the backbone of the game?
So we've always had a cross-chain philosophy, really since I
Yeah.
started in 2017, that's been my philosophy. So the early versions of BlockLords, we were on Neo, we were on Tron, but then we took a break. We worked on Seascape, which was really all about cross-chain gaming integrations. And now for the new version of BlockLords, we are on Polygon and we're on Immutable X right now. That said, we're really dedicated to being a cross-chain game. So the idea is you go to the game to play and have fun, but if you want to mint your NFT, it's really up to you where you want to do it. And we're going to try to make it as widely accessible as possible.
Yeah, I love that idea. And we're seeing more and more games, more and more NFT projects, everything from like PFPs to gaming to, everything going cross chain. It makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. I've said it a lot of time, I have a lot of Ethereum NFTs just because that was like the first NFTs I was buying. And then I kind of was like, Ethereum is the best NFT blockchain. But now I absolutely see a use case for all the layer two solutions,
Yeah.
especially, if you were into NFTs a couple of years ago, everyone was like, you're firing off hundreds of dollars at gas fees. And you're like, is
Yeah.
this really how the
Yeah.
money of the internet should work? But I was still doing it and I
Yeah.
loved it and don't regret any of it.
Yeah.
But there's definitely, we're evolving.
Yeah. DeFi was my poison of choice, but I spent a lot of money on DeFi gas fees. It's pretty crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, when tax season rolls around and I start like peeling through like tax gas fees
Mm,
and I'm like looking through it, I'm like, okay, this was a lot. When
money.
you bust the
Yeah.
calculator out, this gets high. Um,
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about so I know it looks like you're in the beta version right now or the beginning
Yeah.
version. Okay.
Yeah. This is an
So
early access. Yeah.
awesome. So tell me when's the plan for the full release? How's that roadmap looking?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be in early access as long as it needs to be. I prefer not to give a timeline, but essentially, we have a lot of players a lot of players in the game giving us a lot of feedback. There's obviously a lot of bugs to fix. Like, making an MMO game is the hardest type of game to make. Adding a
Sure.
Web3 economy and adding, essentially doing a game that's never been done before, which this really is, because we're taking essentially a lot of MMO concepts, a lot of free to play concepts, and a lot of hardcore single player strategy game concepts, putting them in an online setting. So what we're looking at sometime in 2024 will likely be full launch. It might even be 2025. But for me, full launch means all the battle features are done for the single player modes, the PvP modes. That's all done. A fully functioning token economy, the dynasty system, the breeding system, all of that. So for that, I'd say we're about a year away, if not a little more. But that said, there's a lot planned both for the Web3 and the Web2 players while we get to that stage. So to me, there's not going to be a huge difference between early access and finished product, because the early access we're going to keep polishing and improving with every
Mhm.
update. We're averaging, an update every 2 weeks for now. That's a very good pace, and I think we're going to be keeping it for the next 2 or 3 years at least. So yeah, even if we're not in full launch for another year or two, it's definitely going to keep improving and keep getting better and better.
Yeah, that's outstanding. An update every 2 weeks in Web 3. My goodness, that's overachieving, David. That's very
Yeah,
so. But it probably makes sense to get involved as early as possible, right? You want
yeah,
to get early access. You want to understand how to farm, how to
yeah.
communicate with people. There's probably tons of game theory. So when you launch the game, I mean, a year is like nothing. I feel like
Yeah,
I
no,
feel like I would.
exactly. And it was definitely a risky move. We definitely launched it a bit prematurely, and there's been a lot of bugs. And our community, sometimes they're patient, sometimes they're not. But we're learning to manage the expectations and to deal with that. But overall, it's been a huge bonus, because I can tell you, if because now it's been 2 months, right, 2.5 months. If we hadn't launched it then and waited, we would be still months behind where we are now, right? Like the amount of fixes and polishes and things we didn't think of that the players spot right away
Totally.
is huge. So just having it out there, definitely coming from Web2 background, that was scary, but I think it's been for the best, and I think it's definitely going to benefit us, 2, 3 years down the line when we have a game that's way, way further than any others in the space.
Yeah. I mean, I love your style. You seem like you're really taking a very methodical approach behind the game, and you're thinking player first, community first, and I mean that's like the ethos of Web3, and something
Yeah,
that you've been in for 5-6 years. You get it, but it's I think the best way people can learn and develop and make the best game possible is to deploy a beta version. Hey,
yeah,
manage everyone's expectations. There's going to be some bugs. There's going to be some issues and frustrations. We're humans. I get frustrated at everything, but
yeah,
that's the best way to improve the game. And as long as it seems like you're already a very open communicator with like 2-week updates. If you're communicating, hey, fixing this, or this
yeah,
region's closed for a little bit because we're going to fix this bug. People
mm,
might be initially frustrated, but in the long run,
yeah.
it's going to knock it out of the park. I love it. I urge everyone to take a look at the website. If you wouldn't mind telling our audience just kind of the whole, like the 101, how to get started, your website,
Yeah.
how they get an NFT, how to get early access, that would be great.
Yeah, so the easiest way is really get on the Epic Game Store, sign up for an account if you don't have one, and download the game. It's completely free. You do need a PC, a pretty good PC for now. We're obviously working on optimizing all the time to allow for more PCs. But yeah, get on the Epic Game Store, type BlockLords, and download. That's the best way. If you want to buy NFTs, you can use that same account that you're using in game
Nice.
for on Epic Game Store. You can use that same account, connect it on the web, connect your wallet. We're on Polygon and Matic. You can get the basic heroes are the free ones. They're worth about $2-3. But I strongly suggest get some legacy heroes. And if you can afford it, I really strongly suggest get a unique and claim a region and land. Definitely, we're early access. Definitely, we appreciate users who have helped us with playing and bug fixing. And that gratitude is going to be shown when we do launch the token. So I strongly suggest your audience to start playing and interacting with the community.
Yeah, see, that's a lot of alpha, everybody. That's as much alpha as you're gonna get anywhere from a CEO of a top game Web3 game being developed, basically telling you to get your butt in there and poking around because there's gonna be some incentives. David, awesome stuff. Everybody, we're gonna definitely put the links to the game, to the FAQs, to the whole shebang there in the video description, so you could go right to their website, go to the Epic Store, get going. I know personally, I'm gonna fire up the PC. I'm gonna claim a few heroes here. I'd love to have a region, but I'm gonna have to look into the specifics of it. But Lord Brian has like a ring to it that I would really like to, tax some farmers. And awesome stuff, David. Thank you so much. Everybody, please check out the game. We'd love to have you back on maybe in a few months, or as you
Sounds good.
launch in a year or something along those lines, or a full game. We'd love to have you back on the podcast. Just keep a catch up because it really looks like you're onto something special here. And we appreciate having you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Looking forward to next time.
Thanks, David.